So here's me performing Tender Surrender by Steve Vai at the age of 18 in 2011. At this point, I've been playing guitar for 4.5 years, and where 2 years out of them were like really serious guitar playing. I can hear that the technique is pretty much there and bends are also really accurate. But besides of that, I think there is lack of certain accuracy which comes from maybe from rhythm and maybe like the intonation, especially with clean guitar sound. And I can hear some kind of harshness from with this clean guitar sound. Besides that, what I really would like to hear at this point would be like having a little bit more like vibrato, because back then I didn't really use that technique. But I think vibrato here would be really necessary in order to like deliver the message of the song a lot better. So my question here is, what if you could improve faster and more efficient way than what I did? So just to add a little bit more contrast, that solo was done last night when I was working on a solo for a new original song. This is coming out later, out this year. But I think here you can also hear like the overall sound what I have, where I am currently at. What I can hear there was that I'm using a little bit more vibrato and not just relying on doing that with a tremolo arm or with a tremolo bar. So I think that's a lot of more improvement. But besides that, I think the overall approach to the guitar has changed a lot during these years. The bends, there's more accuracy for the notes. And of course, this isn't the perfect take. There's a little bit more sloppiness that I can hear, but I think that's just a matter of practice. That first clip was recorded 2011, I think around March, and this new clip was done like March 2025. So with this 14-year difference, I think today I can still figure out the ways to be able to execute the right way the solos. I have the chops or better understanding how to develop my technique. If the song is challenging for me to play, I think I have now the tools to build up the technique or theoretic foundation in order to perform it in a way that can sound really good on the recording or on a performance as well. If I really have to think what has changed, I have just spent a lot of time with the instrument, and I think that's still one of the key things to consider when it comes down to thinking about the progress. Spending time with the instrument pretty much equals to making some sort of progress. But I think over these years, I've started to think about more creative ways to use the instrument. I spent years on building up the foundation in order to navigate on the fretboard, and I think improvisation and also the fretboard theory or knowledge has been really important parts of my practice. Nowadays I try to create music. That's my main focus. I try to create, and if I find a really good song, I try to learn it by ear just to practice how my ears work in different situations and just analyze why this song is great, why this guitar part is great. But from time to time, I may have like musical situations where I have to figure out what to play on a song, and there's a short notice to do that. That just literally happened a few weeks ago when I just had to perform a gig with a really short notice. So therefore, being a well-rounded guitarist, it won't hurt at all, but I think it's also important to specialize in a certain area. What I did was, it was mainly around like the Steve Vai type of like highly technical music, but I think over the years I just started to develop that like towards the songwriting way and music production. I think one of the key moments around my career was once I discovered that I can also use alternate picking, because before that I only used down picking for each note that I performed. But once I figured out that, yeah, I can use the upstroke as well, well, that changed my picking technique a lot, I have to say. So if I have to then go back to the way how I did the practicing in my first years of playing guitar, like the first 4 years or so, I have to admit that it was pretty basic. What I was figuring out was to get to know the minor pentatonic and minor scale. And then maybe a little bit more, the Dorian was kind of another scale that I tried to get understanding how to play because of discovering Steve Vai's music, and then just trying to improvise over those instrumental tracks by Satriani and Vai, but not really having the understanding how to do a really good improvisation. So basically it was just around getting to know songs and then improvise somehow or some way to add my spice on those songs. And usually it came by just watching the live takes of these songs and then thinking about like maybe I could do those, or maybe I could change something around here or there. But that was basically how I practiced. Just focus on the lead stuff, not really metronome practice, and just getting to technique in order to play along with those tracks. So that I think there was a little mistake by doing that, because then I became more ignorant of the overall technique, and I think there was a lot more that I could have discovered, which was like maybe getting to know the theory and applying it on the fretboard and all around the fretboard, which is also really important because this instrument is the way where we apply everything we know. That's how I view the music. If I have to narrow down one phrase to describe how I practice, it was just put the hours to improve. And that's why I played a lot of guitars once I was in high school. But I don't think those hours were the most efficient way to make sure that I improve as a guitar player. So when I was applying to the conservatories for the first time and got a declined answer for the study place, I realized that I need to do changes to my practice routine, because the way how I practiced didn't really work in order to perform better in those audition situations. And I think those moments really measured where I was as a musician. I think my philosophy towards practice changed when I was more focusing on those auditions and in order to get the study place from conservatories in Finland. And I think the most important part was that I started to go to the gym And there I got my first training program, which was more like, I think, one full body workout that I went over like a few times a week. But in that program, I noticed that it was divided to a certain like muscle groups. So what I started to already like think like how this could be applied to guitar playing. And then I took a few lessons from Steve Vai, rhythm guitarist, or he was back then Dave Wiener, who also had Guitopia. And during his lessons, he really well pointed out how to have a really good foundation with guitar practice. And that's kind of the way how I view guitar playing as well, and how I provide suggestions how to practice this awesome instrument. So like what changed the most was that I used theory and technique in order to create music. That was like number one thing. I just wanted to create music with everything I knew. Once I was doing my bachelor's degree, I just aimed for creating music out from like these guitar exam things that were like including a lot of theoretical information that I had to get to know on this instrument. So creating music made most sense to me. So Time to Define was my way to just express myself through the theory that I learned for those exams that were part of the curriculum. But if I have to think what really changed and helped me to create the progress, I think it was just learning the natural notes or the notes in general around the fretboard, and then the octave shapes that you can create out from those notes. Because then, well, it's technically called caged system, but it helped me to understand how to connect together the theory, technique, and then like under the technique umbrella, the scales, chords, and arpeggios, which plays a huge role in music. So basically what I started doing was playing the note, saying it out loud, and maybe even like where it's on the fretboard. Something like, okay, here's A, it's open string, open A string, B, second fret on the A string, C, third fret on the A string, and so on. So if I consider this being like A minor, I could have done something like A, the root note of the scale, B, the second note of the scale, C, the major third of the scale, and so on. And then doing the same in the positions as well. So I think that helped me to get better understanding how the intervals work in every scale, because I kind of like kept rotating that neck theory practice. So I just changed every day the key that I used for the practice. So having like a compound practice was also really important to me, which meant that I kind of tried to find a lick or riff that used a specific theory, and then use it as a technical exercise, and then use it in the improvised situation. So I think that helped me also to develop my voice as a guitar player. When it comes down to developing my practice routine, I think nowadays I just aim towards improvising from time to time. I approach solos from like a improvisational point of view, so that helps me to practice that skill set as well. I don't really have a routine at the moment because I still have to deal with different tasks that are related to guitar. So I think that basically means that I have to do administrative work as an independent artist. but overall I try to create music every day, whether it's like just improvising or just creating new music or work on new parts of the song, because I still have to use the technique to be able to play that, and also like the music theory knowledge in order to, I don't know, play, improvise, work on those parts and so on. So that's where that like foundation starts to shine, and where I'm actually using it in a practical way. I know there are some shows coming up where I'm more like a featuring artist, so I'm trying to think about like those songs in a way, or understand like the theoretical way, which helps me to remember them also a lot better. So I'm not really relying on like lead sheets or anything like that. I'd say my daily practice or guitar playing is depending on what I'm working on. So right now I'm just trying to get the time spent on the guitar tracks that needs to be recorded for my upcoming album, and then the other part of the daily usage on guitar or music goes to songwriting for other projects or songwriting in general. So I try to have time spent on both songwriting, composing stuff, and then just creating that new album, which is going to take a lot of time still in order to make it to see the daylight. So yeah, that's basically how I practice nowadays. So when it comes down the evolvement around the music, I have to say that at first I was really focusing on the shred guitar music, the guitar virtuoso music. But I think the most healthy thing that I did was to branch out and start to learn other types of approaches to music and perform music from different genres. I played also in big band for about a year, so that was quite an experience to then use the sight reading jobs that I had, because that was like part of my guitar practice in the beginning as well. So being able to perform with a big band was also like a really valuable experience. But for me to be able to find my own style, I think it all started once I discovered alter bridge and also started to learn more songwriting and create songs with lyrics. I think that like opened the way for me to create music, to find the unique sound, because then I started to experiment a lot with different guitar tunings. Got to know how to produce songs when there are more room for vocals. And I think once I did that in a way that was quite close to sounding like Tremonti or alter bridge, I think that way I found a way that helped me to create music and become the guitar player that I'm nowadays. I feel that I have like my own unique way of creating and sounding. I hope so a lot, but I think once I started to work on the song Ahead of the Storm, I think it started to make sense then to like use all those different bands and artists and the influences that I gathered from them over the years. So I think, as I said, being open to different music helped me a lot to find a unique voice, different styles, like listening and playing them. Not necessarily getting really deep into them, but just get the general understanding and finding like all kinds of music. It was for me the way to get better as a musician as well. But I think those Steve Vai tunes helped me a lot to get better technique. In order to be able to play those Steve Vai songs, it requires a lot of technique. I kind of managed to get some sort of technique to perform them. It would be interesting to have a rematch with those songs, but maybe we could do that if this song gets like 100 likes or, I don't know, 10,000 views. Let's see if that happens, or 100 comments. So you better comment. But anyways, Steve Vai songs helped me to get the technique, and then learning those alter bridge and tremonti songs then got me the better understanding of like how to write songs as a songwriter. That helped me to get my unique voice. Then the fretboard knowledge and technique came from just that meaningful practice routine. So by that I mean I started to think about a routine that is efficient and creates a really good foundation for me as a guitar player, and that's basically the way how I practiced. So the one that I mentioned earlier got me the most. I have to admit that like that was the routine that helped me to get a lot better musician and guitar player. So just getting to know the fretboard, improvising, creating riffs and licks, and using them in different musical situations. So I have to admit that like practicing in a way where there is a good foundation just inside of that like practice routine, which means that like there's the neck theory and then general theory applied to the instrument, improvising, creating riffs. That's all that I would say. And then the technique training that is also heavily based on the licks and riffs that you're kind of like creating on that date. And then recording music helped me to really like get better and more accurate musician, because I always aimed to have a really good takes just for posting on socials, but also like recording those songs in a way where I don't really use overdubs. I still aim to use as little as possible overdubs with my songs. So when it comes down to my influences and how you can hear them the most obvious way, here's one of the Steve Vai licks. And because Steve Vai licks aren't enough, here's the most obvious way of hearing a guitar solo in style of tremonti. So that's basically where my influences come from. I'm more curious to hear what has influenced or inspired your guitar playing. If I have to give 3 tips for a quick improvement with this instrument, number 1 is probably like getting to know the fretboard. So either just be able to find the note as quickly as possible. For example, if I have to pick up C, I know where exactly all the C notes are on the fretboard. Also, you have to be able to go downwards with the fretboard as well. So you would go like this. And so on, because then if you are able to find the root note, then you just have to apply the scale on top of that. For example, and so on. So it's a lot easier to perform once you are more aware of like moving on the fretboard, where each note are with that scale. And then besides that, you know all the notes, understand the theory that is related on the fretboard. For example, you know where the third is in the key of C major, so it's E. And also how to create the arpeggio with the C note. Let's say C major 7. Or let's say we want to play that as a chord around the fretboard. And so on. So be able to know the notes and then be able to use the knowledge you have, the music theory. Besides just knowing the fretboard and theory and how to apply it on this instrument, then I think it's all about then being able to have the tools for saying what you want to say with this instrument. By that I mean all these like technical things, such as like vibrato, which is also really important. I think that needs to be like on top of the things that you need to work on. So you have to be able to use it around the fretboard, but also with bends. And then try to practice different ways of using the vibrato, whether it's like really slow or really quick. So try to find out the way that you really enjoy using, and then after the vibrato, then bends, and those together are really powerful tools that make you sound like you, in my opinion. And then there are other techniques that you can then put more effort on based on your interest. I think legato is a really good one. The picking technique was a really weak point of my playing for a long time, so I decided to start work on the hybrid picking, and now I try to find out ways where I can pick a lot or then also combine it with hammer-ons and pull-offs in order to have a little bit more smoother sound. So I think it's all about like finding the balance between picking a lot or then using the hammer-ons and pull-offs to have this like shred type of guitar sound. I have to say, like from retrospective point of view, I think it would have been a lot better if I started to like create music earlier on, like actually collect song ideas and start to write music. I was quite late with that, so I don't say there was a complete waste of time, because I consider like practicing steel voice songs was a long time where I got a really good foundation of playing technique. But in order to go even further with playing, I probably would have tried to get to know the fretboard a little bit better in order to understand the songs as well. So I think I would have just changed like those foundational things that I consider being foundational, and maybe the progress could have been different. I have to admit that like using the time with the instrument back then in the high school and just practicing the technique, it helped a lot to improve as a guitar player. So I'd say it was a really good thing to do. But on the other hand, I think it could have been a lot better not to get influenced by other people around me, because what I thought was that I needed to use a specific type of string sets in order to sound good, or I was a weaker player if I used like nines on my jam, so that's why I used tens. But I never really got my guitar playing adjusted to that. So I think like I would have experimented earlier even more with different kind of guitar gear that was a lot cheaper, like such as guitar string sets and maybe like guitar picks. So I think one of the biggest mistakes probably could be the idea of like actually understanding the instrument and becoming creative and improvisation as well. But I have to admit at this point that it comes from my academical point of view, that it's important to improvise. But at the same time, I see that it's also creating music with the instrument. And it's also important to start to think about the ways to create the own sound by taking influences. So I think it's more important to figure out the ways how to take those influences in a really good way. And as an example, I can say that once I was studying in Denmark, I had to learn some solos or make transcriptions of them. But then we kind of like then analyzed that solo and then tried to find out the ways how to use those solos as a part of our own vocabulary without sounding like, I don't know, like John Mayer or B.B. King. So I think that approach would be more healthy for modern guitarists as well. So in order to make the own guitar sound, I think like this outro guitar solo of the song Ahead of the Storm that just recently was released is a really good example of using examples but not exactly sounding like my influences. And it goes like this. So that's all for now about my progress as a guitar playing and how I would change things, or what I think were really on point during these like almost 20 years of guitar playing, and what I could have changed and what I could have kept as a part of my practice routine. I hope this helped. If you really like this video, let me know in the comments what was really useful on this one. And if you want to find some tools, you can also join on my Patreon page. I'm uploading there more like material that I would use for practice, and you can also get some feedback of your playing. If you want me to help your guitar playing, take a deeper look at your like current state of musicianship, you can also book a guitar lesson from me. You can find those both from the link below, and remember to subscribe this channel for more videos like this. Hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.